It has been a long time since you've heard that intro because I lost the files to it. But that's because I'm on StreamYard, people. And that means that I have a special guest, which is my friend Phil. Phil, who is with me on the USL show and does all the things. Like, you need to take a break from something. Seriously, Loco, like your Substack protagonist. Uh I'm assuming it's pronounced hardcore. I can't remember. Like, you do all the things. Um, take a break. Take a rest. Good friend Phil Baki. What are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me, Killer. I know this is like one of the few times, or like the one time a year, that we are actually have our clubs facing off against each other. It's mainly I felt like we've had a lot of like fellowship over rough patches of form. So now we are in active sort of I guess contest at a time when both clubs are sort of figuring it out. Maybe obviously El Paso is a little more drastic than Birmingham, but yeah, excited to chat about it, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, all for people who aren't caught up on El Paso and Legion are kind of just like long lost twins. When El Paso is bad, Legion is bad. When Legion are good, El Paso is good. They're consistently inconsistent, and they always seem to go together. And it's funny. I think even the USL show, the fan voted, both had El Paso and Legion at sixth in their in their conference. That was fan vote, not us. So
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
Before we get too far, I need to do a couple of things. I would like to go ahead and thank my wonderful patrons, John, Leroy, Richard, Trey, Scott, Dury, Paul, Dylan, Matt, Zach, and Sandy. Thank you guys so much for supporting me. Every single cent that is donated through this Patreon is getting me and Phil out to Oakland. So please send us to Oakland. I mean, I already have the plane bought. It's it's not like that I'm not going, but make it a little bit easier on us.
It's really recouping the costs more so than anything. But no, I am getting more and more excited for that. I know it isn't directly related to either of our clubs, but yeah, an exciting opportunity to cover USL. And I think just shows, like, you know, as the league is more serious, hopefully the content creators around it can be taken more seriously as well.
Absolutely. Before we get to El Paso, real quick, Legion FC2, aka the Hammers, as I am calling them, they get their first win of the season, 1-0, thanks to Ty Sanchez, whom is kind of new for me. I think he has been around this whole time, but he's the number 11, kind of a right wing player in the 4-3-3. As this team, they have grown throughout the year. The midfield is still catching up. Still a lot of just kind of long ball, someone's down there somewhere. But let me tell you, like, if you haven't got a chance to check out Simon Wittman, because I think he's German, he's incredible. Alan Melendez and Kobe Mosley, the two center backs, the number 4 and the number 6, are incredible. If you want to watch high quality center back play, go check out the Hammers. Alan Melendez and Kobe Mosley are incredible. And on the WFC side, the 3 Sparks, they get all 3 points. The weekly WFC, people, is coming back. So that's why this episode was a little bit late. It's because I got kind of stuck with we kind of got a little off schedule, but that's why we are here. We are. We got it was a 2-1 win where I'm just gonna be honest. Madison Schultz for Athens had one of the best games I've ever seen. This match should have been 5-1, and I mean, nothing that Legion could have done to make this scoreline any different. She was just playing out of her skull. Despite Nora Roller being absolutely her, Like, she is without a doubt her. Um, Kaylin Maynard is incredible, just absolutely incredible. And there's a whole lot of other players on this team that have been playing really well. They've been doing this weird thing where they've been subbing out Mac Titus, who is the goalkeeper, who is always on the weekly WFC, and Casey Powell. They do it every single game. It's been weird. I don't know how I feel about it. Anyway, so 3 Sparks get 3 more points, and 3 points, something that Birmingham hasn't seen too much recently with the Legion professional team. But El Paso just got their first win in a long, long time, coming off of the back of the new era, Cabrera era, Wilmer Cabrera's first game in charge of El Paso after Brian Clareout gets sacked. This comes at the hands of Charleston, whom the Battery, as all Legion fans know, are no joke. Even despite going down a man, Charleston is kind of different gravy, and I still think down a man, they are expected to win matches. And I mean, we can get all into the nitty gritties of it, but it's a gutsy win for El Paso to get the first 3 points in new era.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and the reason that this game comes at a tough time, I think, for Birmingham, in the sense that, like, this was a El Paso team completely bereft of any self-belief or confidence. Like, we talked at the beginning of the season on the USL show. John highlighted, we highlighted on Seriously Loco, just how good this team is on paper. And there was all of that like natural ability and confidence, and just them being able to lean on what make them, each of them, like, so good, was sort of pulled out during Claerhaut's like reign, because he was trying to play this very specific tactical system, and sort of regardless of the results was persisting with that system. And Wilmer Cabrera's really just focused on getting back to basics and having the team play in a way that emphasizes each player's strengths and gives them a little bit of confidence back. I think in the Charleston game, Charleston continued to be dangerous even with 10 men. And I think it does highlight the fact that this El Paso team still has a lot of work to do in getting back to what they can actually be, and maybe hitting their ceiling. But it did at least signify maybe the banishment of some of the demons of these, like, 3-2 losses against New Mexico United and Oakland Roots, that were so demoralizing. And I think, if nothing else, this team at least has a little bit of the swagger back that you would have expected them to have at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, there's a lot I want to kind of hit here. One thing that I remember we talked about on the USL show was the thing that I thought that El Paso should do, that, me, who's been through all the coaching courses, that knows all the things about tactics and stuff, was it felt like this team was built for a 4-2-3-1. It just felt like pretty much if they were to copy exactly what Hartford are doing or were doing when they were rolling, then they have absolute superstar wingers, which there's a couple for El Paso that we can talk about as well. It just feels like that's what they were built for, but they kept pushing this 3-5 at the back and live and die by the winger or by the wing back, but they were mostly just dying by the wing back. They switched to a 4-back even under Clareout the last 2 games.
Yeah.
And it looked better. It just looked better automatically, too little too late for him, but that's what they came out with against Charleston, and it finally looked complete. The name that Legion fans are going to really know is Bolu Akinyode.
Yeah.
They're going to remember him when he was here in Birmingham, which Birmingham might be the reason why Clareout got sacked, because he watched Bolu be a center back for a full year and was like, that's a great idea. And as opposed to having him be arguably the best midfielder in the USL. That's something that's there. But for me, The player that I am circling, I always circle with this El Paso team is Liam Rose. I just always feel like this team goes with Liam Rose. And, Armando Moreno, we can talk about him all day long and how playing him out wide, who to thunk it. But I, for me, it's Liam Rose, and he is the guy that I'm always watching because if he's rolling, so is this El Paso team.
Yeah, it's really interesting because basically the approach that Wilmer took in this game was he started from what you could call, I guess you could call it a 4-4-2, a 4-2-4, whatever. But he played with two in midfield, and he played with Eric Calvillo and Liam Rose next to each other. And I thought it was fine. Thought it was okay. Liam is, I mean, I think you're right to highlight him. He is sort of he gets asked to do a lot in this El Paso team, and I think he is capable of a lot, which is a credit to him. And I think there is an important inflection point in this game where Bolu's introduction, where they take off Joaquin Rivas, who had a little bit of a tough time like asserting himself in this game as part of a front four, or like he just like didn't really get into the game that much. I think him and Justin Dillon both sort of struggled in that way. They take off Rivas, they bring on Akinyode, and they switch to a 4-3-3 where they've got Calvillo and Liam Rose playing as eights, and then Bolu in the hole behind him. That just felt like the right balance, and and there just felt like a nice change there. And it's actually Liam Rose making a run into the box that leads to the opener, which is not something that you typically see from Liam, but Bolu's introduction allows that. Like, it gives him freedom to interchange with Eric and like just give a little bit more variation coming out of midfield. I think if Bolu's introduced from the start here, like the way that I'd love to see this Wilmer Cabrera side continue to line up is with Bolu in the six behind Eric and Liam in a 4-3-3. We'll see if he actually goes that way. I mean, the danger of that is you basically wed yourself to a system where all three of your midfielders have to start every single game the rest of the season, which is that's not ideal, right? So I can see where rotation will be key, and he'll obviously need to figure something out there. But the balance towards the end of the game was just really, really strong with Bolu in there. And I think he is showing both in his ability to cover a ton of space in front of the back four and his ability to actually be a part of the press when he's in the six. Is just there's just something really, really special about Bolu being in there. But Liam is he's sort of an X factor, and I'd agree that he, as he goes, Locomotive often goes.
It's funny when you mention Joaquin Rivas, and a lot of Legion fans are like, Joaquin Rivas, I know that name. He's been kind of everywhere. He's done all of the USL. You know him from everywhere. He was Tulsa. I know he was with Miami. Was he an RGV guy at one point?
I know Tulsa and Miami. I don't know if he was at RGV. That is feeling that it sounds right, but I don't know if it actually is.
Yeah, I mean, either way. He's been around for a long, long time. You kind of mentioned that 4-4-2-4, which is really what my brain thinks of Wilmer Cabrera, because when they were playing well, when Rio Grande Valley, which is where Wilmer's last stop was, when they were playing well, they were in this high pressing 4-2-4, just press the ever living crap out of you. And if they were going to get scored on, whatever, but you weren't going to have a fun time working out the back. And you kind of mentioned this as a 4-2-4. Joaquin Rivas, you mentioned him not being able to work himself into the match, really. He was dropping in deep a lot, almost making a pseudo 4-3-3 with basically 3 8s in the midfield. And it was weird. And the first half, I mean, Charleston was all over El Paso. And one name that I think a lot of Legion fans will remember from his dark days at Pittsburgh is Jamali Waite. And Jamali Waite has had a weird narrative about him for a little bit, that he wasn't actually that good. He was just a lily ball merchant, basically. And there was this weird thing that Bob Lilly was doing with Waite, where he was asking Waite to play higher up in the box, to act like a sweeper, while also playing one of the lowest lines I've ever seen in my life. And so they just basically just sat on top of each other. Waite was not able to do the thing that he does really well, which is be a ridiculous shot stopper. And it was bizarre. In this match, Jamal without a Jamali Waite, this match is 3-4 to 2, maybe.
Yeah.
He was
Oh, he's been insane. I think this whole season and it's sort of flown under the radar because El Paso's been so damn bad. But the reality is that it would have been a lot worse if not for him. I mean, he won Save of the Week like 3 weeks in a row or something like
yeah.
that at the beginning of the season. He's made something like the fourth most saves in the league, which the club hyped up, and it was like, this isn't the flex you think it is type thing. But Jamali Waite, it has been truly one of like elite, I would say, in goal. He makes such good decisions in terms of like, he commands his penalty area really well. He's basically made one error the whole season, which is he conceded a penalty against Oakland Roots when he came for a cross and got the man, not the ball. It happens. And I would say in general, though, he's been like pretty much error free for the large portion of the season. And yeah, like the initial part of the season would have been a lot worse if not for Jamali Waite, because there are a couple of times he absolutely stood on his head and pulled out some incredible saves. I would put him up there with any of the best, like, people that we traditionally think of as the best shot stoppers in the league. And in general, like, I think his decision making really sets him apart. There's a reason that he's Jamaica's number 2 behind Andre Blake, like, who is a very, very good goalkeeper. Yeah, I could easily see him making a step in the next couple of years, because he is still relatively young as well, like for a goalkeeper, especially.
When you're looking at this is just side tangent, that Jamaican goalkeeping room, the future of Jamaica's goalkeeping is in the USL. I mean, between Jamali Waite and Amal Knight,
Yeah.
and those are both class goalkeepers. They're not just, oh, small CONCACAF team has goalkeepers. Andre Blake, best goalkeeper in CONCACAF, and Jamali Waite and Amal Knight are not that far behind.
No, that's yeah, they are, and they are next up. I think it'll be a matter of time before they get shots at higher levels, but yeah, Jamali Waite has been putting in. I honestly feel for him every single time that Locomotive concede, because it's just like it's not your fault, Jamali. Like, it has
the one goal that
rarely
you
been.
guys
Yeah.
conceded against Charleston, he had saved until it deflected behind him.
Yeah. Yep. No, yeah, it's been a rough it's been a rough year. Luckily, I think, the story out of this game, luckily, is that Locomotive found a way to find the winner, when in the past, like, they've kind of just imploded. Once they get punched in the mouth, like, they kind of just lay down. And luckily in Wilmer Cabrera's first game, they did find the fight back. But yeah, like you said, it could have been a lot worse. And there were moments even with 10 men where I was pretty convinced that, man, Charleston's still gonna find a way. Because they are just a very good team.
They are very good. Couple more things before I let you go. Um, there's a couple players that I think you kind of have to hit. Justin Dillon, who has been around the league for a while now. His time in Tacoma, I feel like he was there longer than he actually was. I felt like he was in Tacoma for 3 years, but he really wasn't. But he was in San Antonio for a long time.
Yeah.
He was kind of playing this false 9 thing, and I don't really remember him doing that in years past. Granted, in years past, with San Antonio, he had other guys kind of goals by committee for San Antonio. They never really had true talisman. Between Armando Moreno, who has been coming out of the wings and just been absolutely incredible, and Tumi Moshibane, what are you kind of looking at in terms of this 4-3?
Yeah, I mean, in that 4-3, I'd love to see Justin. Like, I think he's shown flashes of being able to pull off this false nine or this like playmaking nine. I hate to use like Premier League analogies, especially Liverpool. I'm wearing a Liverpool hat, but the Roberto Firmino role, like that sort of, dropping into the hole and playing the ball into the feet of the wingers, like to bring them into play. I do think it can work, and Dylan's physicality like definitely gives him an edge in terms of like being able to body defenders and like hold his own against center backs, hold the ball up and bring people into play. In general, I think against Charleston, he looked a little bit like caught in between, like, am I playing as a striker or am I playing as a playmaker? Where half the time he was offside trying to make a run in behind, half the time he was like trying to link up with midfield. So it just felt like a little bit off. I do think that's something they can lock in a little bit more. And I like personally, with the talent on the wings that Locomotive do have with Armando Moreno, Tumi Moshibane, Joaquin Rivas, like those are guys that you would love to see running onto the ball, like, and getting brought into play by a guy like Justin Dillon. So I think it can work. Whether they decide to like push that way, I guess kind of remains to be seen. But yeah, I think in general, I think it can work. I think Dillon has shown that he is like, he's put in a lot of work. He's another player that I sort of feel for in terms of like how the form has been, because what he was being asked to do under Claire Hout was just hold up play. And so he's just fighting center backs for 90 minutes, like, and trying to win headers, trying to win knockdowns, trying to win flick-ons, trying to chest the ball down like under pressure. And it was just like a lot of toil for not a lot of payoff. And so I'm hoping that if they can maybe bring him into a more withdrawn role, they can kind of take him out of the fight a little bit. And if he's playing 1-2s with the likes of Moreno, Moshibane, then like maybe he does get into more goal scoring areas as well as a result.
But we haven't really talked about the back line too much. One guy that I don't know if it was I think the last time he played was against Switchbacks, but Noah Dollenmeyer was a guy that I was obsessed with at the end of last year. He was a guy that I just kept watching his highlights, and I was like, he is the next one.
Yeah.
And is there injury there, or is he just kind of falling out of favor a little bit?
So I think it's a combination of things. I mean, Brandon Craig being brought in definitely hurt like the minutes that he was going to get, because I think the idea of Brandon Craig and Noah Dollenmeyer starting next to each other in central defenses is a little bit tough, just because that's like low experience, high ceiling for sure, like, and two very talented center backs. I think Brandon Craig, whatever deal Locomotive made with the Union, like, I do think there's probably playing time guarantees there. Not to say that Craig hasn't been good, because I think he's been completely fine, and he had that injury layoff where Dollenmeyer came in. Dollenmeyer also got a little bit exposed by the system, I think, previously, where he was sort of ending up in these like one-on-ones with quick wingers, which for a 6'7" center back is like not where you want him, like ISO'd out on the wing, right?
Yeah.
Where he's like trying to square up to Malik Foster or something like that. It's like that's a mismatch, and like we should probably eliminate that. I think in general, like Dollenmeyer still has a lot like to be able to show. I think he's a little bit a victim of circumstance with them bringing in Brandon Craig. And I think in general he is still working on refining sort of the brains, where I think like he plays with high emotion. He is like I think he is like very, very talented, obviously athleticism off the charts. And he just has to like refine those like parts of his game in terms of like not being caught out of position, not ending up like in bad situations. But I think in general, like he is right up there in terms of like he should be battling for starting minutes, and I think we'll see more from him. They've preferred Craig and Alfaro like as a pair ever since they switched to the back four. Tony Alfaro was extremely sloppy playing out from the back against Charleston and was lucky not to be like punished more. So there is risk there if he doesn't clean that part up, because obviously Cabrera has definitely sent them out with, they were sort of just like hoofing it under Claire Hout.
Yeah.
They're not anymore, which I'm very relieved to see, but it obviously does require a lot of care. And when you're playing a team like Charleston, or in this case, Legion, who tighten things up in the midfield and make it like, they're not going to press you like crazy, but they are going to make it really difficult to make those entry passes into midfield. He's going to have to be really tidy, because Kobe Hernandez Foster is going to be looking to cut those passing lanes and step in front of the ball. And now all of a sudden you're under pressure. So that's the one area where I think Dollenmeyer is maybe a little bit better. And like Alfaro's experience is obviously pretty crucial in just marshaling a backline that isn't the like most experienced across the line.
In terms of just how he plays, and I'm trying to, for people who listen to this who maybe don't listen or watch the USL Championship a lot, I try to connect things back to Legion because people have that frame of mind, right? Dollenmeyer, Dollenmeyer, where he is now, is like a young Alex Cronale. They have the same kind of body type. And if people remember young Alex, especially when he was in MLS, it was baby giraffe vibes. And he's just so tall and so lanky that it was almost like he did. And, Alex, if you're listening to this, I love you, dude. But, you know, as he's gotten older, he has learned how to control his body and is one of the best ball playing center backs you have in the league right now. And is actually pretty solid in those winged areas, like you mentioned, where Dollenmeyer is kind of caught on the back foot because he doesn't quite know how to position himself yet. Because while he is used to having a big body, coaches frankly don't know how to coach a big body like that, because soccer is a little person sport. It just is. You put your guy who is 6 foot tall, who's the monster on your team, at center back. You don't put your starting shooting guard at center back, like,
Yeah.
So I think Alex is actually a good, way to think about this. If I'm a Legion fan and I am thinking about how you talk about the press, Jake Roof comes away from the Sacramento game without picking up a red card, which I am stunned by. With Jake Roof playing that CDM, which I have loved, I think that his move to CDM has been a game changer. With him making that move there, it's allowed Enzo Martinez to be just a pressing freak. All he has to do is press, 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 press. And behind that, like you mentioned, Kobe Hernandez Foster is just kind of sitting there. Tyler Pastor is just kind of sitting there and waiting for someone to make a mistake because of Enzo's what he's doing. Same thing for Stefano Pino, they have been putting him out on the wings now and has been forcing the wing backs or the fullbacks to figure it out. And with El Paso and their struggles earlier on this season at the fullback position, that's what Coach Stone and co are going to be targeting. Is these guys were the wink links. Let's see if they've actually figured it out. I'm going to be intrigued to see how this actually works, because how much can Cabrera get done in 2 weeks? Probably not that much, but getting a win instills confidence, which is more than they've had all year. If you're Birmingham, you're looking at this and granted, Charleston has Air Malloy on free kicks, which is not fair.
No.
But cheat code. But El Paso was susceptible to free kicks all night long. If you're Legion, you're looking at your Alex Cronale, you're looking at your Stefano Pino, and you're saying, win the ball, big fella. Like, you're going to have opportunities. El Paso will give you opportunities. If Legion come out and press and force El Paso to make a decision and just say, we'll live for the corner, I think that's where Legion might make their money on the night.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because I think both teams have undergone this sort of like midfield change. Obviously Son like finding it within his own team and out of like how they started the season, and Cabrera obviously coming in fresh, like with a fresh pair of eyes. Um, for Legion fans, definitely check out John Morrissey's
Yeah.
USL Tactics blog today on the tactical sort of evolution at Birmingham. But I think in general, the midfield, it'll be interesting because a few weeks ago, if you had asked me like, okay, where's this game going to be decided, I would say at the fullback position, right? And both teams have made changes where the midfield has now become the more like vital
Yeah.
part of the field, where it could come down to a little bit of a battle between Jake Roof and Bolu Akinyode, like in terms of who can control the space and be more dominating in those areas. There was still space, I think, just naturally, like the way that Locomotive's fullbacks played, there is still space there, but it was almost because the fullbacks were playing more narrow and more defensively, rather than because they were being like super or hyper
Yeah.
aggressive, but up the field. But yeah, it'll be an interesting battle, and you have to take into account it is going to be at El Paso,
Yep.
lot less space out wide. It's a narrower pitch. It's a shorter pitch. So it's going to be a little bit compressed. I think it could really be played sort of between, in the middle third of the field. Because I think both teams are going to try to congest things. And then spray it out wide to their great attacking players who can make a difference.
Last thing for the night before I let you go, really appreciate you coming on, Phil.
Of course.
Um, w- just in general, you've only had one game to sit with Cabrera, so this is not fair. How, how do you think this one shapes up? I know we discussed this on the USL show last night, 2 nights ago, but how do you see this kind of shaping up? I don't need score results, but
Sure.
like, what's the vibes that you're getting?
Yeah, I'm thinking this is a scoring draw. I think for El Paso, one, their form at home has been absolutely abysmal for like the better part of 2 years. And there's I think it's gonna take time before the team is like geared back up and maybe comfortable in front of a home crowd that has frankly like gotten pretty fed up with how things have gone. Um on top of that, the team didn't show me enough against Charleston to say like clean sheet on the cards. Like I just think they're still too susceptible. You mentioned set pieces, like they're still too susceptible to the odd mistake. Like and they just concede too many chances for me to say comfortably like, oh yeah, we could like get a shutout or something like that, even with Jamali Waite between the sticks. But with the confidence in El Paso like kind of coming back, I do see them scoring a goal, which does make me think that this could easily be a scoring draw.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am. I thought with Cabrera coming in, I thought El Paso was going to try to shoot the lights out, like just play just like this super positive shoot on sight kind of game. And Legion have not been the best at finishing chances. They can dribble into the 18-yard box and just does not work out for whatever reason. I had it as a scoreless draw, nothing against Birmingham, but just like I until I can see them put away chances ruthlessly, I it's kind of hard for me to believe a little bit.
Sure.
And El Paso, I think it just kind of depends on how much you truly believe in what Dylan Moreno, Mushabane, Joaquin Rivas, kinda, what they can do against guys like your Fanwell Cavitas, like your Oz Cronales, and oh my gosh, and I'm blanking on his name now. We just Derek Dodson. You know what you can do against those guys, because it's hard. It's just hard to score against veterans like that.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting watch, and I think the one last X factor is Wilmer Cabrera notoriously changes the system up almost at
Yeah.
like almost with no explanation. So we could have this whole conversation about like, yeah, I think like we could see a 4-4-2, 4-2-4, whatever, or a 4-3-3. And then he could line up with a back three, and with all of this could be completely moot. And who knows what he's got cooking behind the scenes. But yeah, this is at the end we'll always be at the we'll be at the whim of Wilmer Cabrera.
As we always are. Final plugs for you, Phil. All of the things, not just some of them, all of the things, man.
Yeah, so primarily right now, just I will plug. So seriously, Loco, if there are if you're ever coming across Locomotive stuff in the future, but I am on the USL show, and then Phil Talks Footy is my Substack, where I put my random musings, and that goes from like American soccer on the business side, on the playing side, and then European soccer, often like exciting players. And the thing that I've got in the works right now is a preview of the Euros and the Copa America, of like young players to watch out for who weren't at the World Cup. So that's sort of the vibe of the next thing to drop there. So if that's of interest to you, Phil Talks Footy is a Substack. So yeah, I can't post those links on Twitter; they'll get suppressed. So
Oh my god, drives me insane. I'll work on something for days, and then I'll post it, and it's like, you got some decent views, and like 3 of them came from Twitter, and it's like,
yep,
all right,
yep,
cool, thanks. Yeah, hey Phil, appreciate you coming on. Seriously, check out all the things. Seriously, Loco is a good time, even if you're not a Loco fan. If you're not a fan of El Paso Locomotive, I I'll admit I listen to it every single time I can. I try to find content creators all over the place, and seriously, Loco is that I say this a lot, and I probably say it too much, but seriously, top of the top of the top. Like, seriously, Loco is as good as it gets
thanks, man.
across all levels. So check out that, and the Substack is great. I got it through my email, and the Jurgen one was really good. I really appreciated reading your thoughts on it. So cool.
Thanks, man. Appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Also, check if you're a racing person, check him out on Twitter, because I've gotten into racing because of Phil.
Yeah, I'm resisting the urge to add even more like writing hobbies or coverage hobbies, and motorsports is just a Twitter thing. There's not I'm not gonna add anymore.
I respect that for you. Anyway, thank you all so much for listening. I really appreciate you all. Go show Phil some love. Phil Talks Footy on the Twitter machine. Thank you all so much for listening. Until next time, guys. Keep hammering on.